Real American with the latest world news, its reviews and analysis for you. And please subscribe to this channel if you like it. This channel is now on the YouTube and available to everyone.
I want you to notice the RG on this dude's helmet. RG is used almost exclusively by US military. It stands for reconnaissance group. It's not something that Israelis use because they have a different word for reconnaissance. Now, Biden clearly said 2 months ago, no boots on the ground.
No U.S. boots will be on the ground.
This looks like boots on the ground to me. They're also saying the pier wasn't used. But according to this video, taken by an ITF soldier and posted online, that's the pier being used to evacuate hostages. Minutes later, they're photographed with US soldiers. I highly doubt they were there just to escort them on a helicopter ride. Never mind the fact that back in October, late October, we had this lovely picture of President Biden in Israel shaking hands with the Delta Force, a special unit of the US Army. They've been in Israel since October. Let us not forget, one of the most important parts. Dressing up as an aid worker and driving yourself into a refugee camp in an aid truck is a violation of international law. The U.S. is no longer complicit. The U.S. is committing violations of international law. And it's interesting that they felt so comfortable to use an aid truck. They felt pretty confident that they would be successful in this mission doing it this way. And this humanitarian aid pier that they say is so successful, even though it broke, which I find suspicious. Most of the aid went to a warehouse. It was blown up by that so-called state. I wish Western media would do its fucking job and do the investigative journalism and ask the questions that I am asking and point out the discrepancies as they occur. No mention of US boots on the ground. No tying it to the fact that they've been there since October. They can barely mention that 200 innocent Palestinians were killed, 400 injured, to be thrown into a hospital that's not even functioning.
אני לא ציוני, אני יהודי, לא ציון, יהוד, אני יהוד, לא ציון. אני רוצה להיות יהודי כמו פעם, כמו לפני 150 שנה, שחיו פה בשלום בשמחה, שכל הפלסטינים יחזרו לפה, כולם יחזרו לכל המקומות, לתל אביב, הכל שייך לכם.
International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, shouting from the rafters that Israel is carrying out war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. And yet, all of this is showing us, sadly, that Israel has no interest in international law, and the United States has no interest in demanding that Israel actually comply with international law, besides rhetorical flourishes added in statements to the press in the United States. The continued military support to Israel is really not just a savage attack on the Palestinian people, it is a savage attack on international law itself, and it will come to haunt and hurt America for decades to come.
The genocidal claim that there are no civilians in Gaza, everyone is responsible, everyone is guilty, is unacceptable and inhumane. And if we had said anything close to that on the Israeli side, the whole world would be up in arms for such unacceptable statements. People also have to think of the thousands of cancer patients in Gaza who are not receiving treatment now for 8 months, who have lost their home, who have no hospital to go to, who have lost loved ones and don't have the time to mourn them, who have to move and be forcibly displaced from place to place, and they cannot answer the aches of their body because they are trying to survive every single day. 2.3 million Palestinians every single day are fighting to survive famine, bombings, killings. This situation, anybody who's able to justify such harm to civilians, such atrocities committed against civilians, have understood nothing about the lessons of history.
4 Israelis rescued, 270 Palestinians killed, and no ceasefire deal yet. The headlines may be bad, but this is playing out pretty much exactly as Benjamin Netanyahu wants it to. In Jordan, you're on dangerous ground if you accuse the state of complicity with Israel. And Giorgia Meloni's domination over Italy's public broadcaster RAI is leaving very little room for critical journalism. Through the more than 8 months of the war in Gaza, one issue above all else has obsessed much of Israeli society. It's the hostages. On news bulletins, in polls, in the national consciousness, the fate of the Israelis held as prisoners of war in Gaza is a big story. Around 120 out of the approximately 240 abducted by Hamas fighters on October 7th remain in captivity. The dramatic extraction of 4 of them in an Israeli army operation has made some things starkly evident. First, a ceasefire is the most effective process to rescue hostages. A deal in November freed 105 Israelis. Second, Palestinian lives will be sacrificed in any rescue. More than 270 were massacred in the recent assault. And third, politically, the most vital point in Israel right now is that for Prime Minister Netanyahu, the hostage matter is something he pays lip service to, but it's a headache. It gets in the way of what seems to be Netanyahu's effort to prolong this war in order to prolong his own political career.
4 חטופים שלנו, שהמשפחות שלהם כבר באמת חשבו על הנורא מכל זאת, ופתאום לראות אותם כאן, על הרגליים, בריאים ושלמים.
It was a day of high emotion in Israel. After being held for nearly 250 days in captivity in Gaza, 4 Israeli hostages had been extracted by the army. Operation Seeds of Summer, the code name initially given to the hostage rescue campaign, was celebrated across Israel. The jubilation was not just about the return of captives kidnapped by Hamas fighters during the October 7th attack. It was about the reassertion of Israel's military might.
עם ישראל כולו זוכים להיות גם חלק מרגעים כאלה של התעלות, של הצלחה, של ישראליות, צריך להגיד. אני חושב שעם שלם בוכה יחד איתך עכשיו.
The operation was hailed as proof that despite its catastrophic failure to protect the nation 8 months ago, the army was back in control.
I think it's important to harken back to Israel's mythology of its own strength. I mean, since the beginning of Israel's inception, Israel has built itself through its military hammer.
The new Jewish state is born. Arab strongpoints are taken after being blasted to rubble.
This line of Israeli operations that are daring, creative, sublime, has been a fundamental, an important element in the production of Israeli identity itself. So this operation had these elements. But at the same time, we should remember that it accompanied a whole-scale massacre of 270 Palestinians, another 600 injured. But of course, in Israeli-owned narrative, it only included the rescue operation without any significant mention of the massacres that the Israeli army inflicted on the Palestinian civilians in the camp.
The military correspondents gave greatly detailed accounts recounting the drama of the rescue.
קצין בכיר מאוד שאנחנו משוחחים איתו היום, והיה שותף לכמה מבצעים מאוד מאוד גדולים בהיסטוריה של צה"ל, אומר שמבצע נועז כזה הוא לא ראה.
The IDF released some quite dramatic body camera footage, but it does seem like a one-off, I think, even to people who are excited about it. There's a recognition that this sort of thing is not replicable.
Already the hostage situation has dragged on much longer than Israelis have wanted. There are 120 captives still remaining in Gaza. At least a third of them have reportedly been killed in Israeli airstrikes.
יש עוד 120 חטופים שממשלת ישראל צריכה להגיע עבורם לעסקה.
The families of the hostages have come together to become one of the most persistent pressure groups on the Israeli government. At every stage of this war, the hostage families have criticized, lamented, and berated what they call a self-serving leadership. And across Israel, the cause of the hostages has popular sympathy and support.
Every single interaction you have in Israel has something to do with the hostages. When I tried on a blouse in a boutique, there was a poster in the changing cabin that said, "Bring them home now." Every single shop window has the stencil, hashtag "Bring them home now." Bring them home now was the Wi-Fi password at a cafe I work at in Tel Aviv. There are pictures of the hostages taped to park benches.
The Netanyahu government, when Netanyahu announced the ultimate aims of this war, which were returning the hostages and then total victory, as he claimed it over Hamas, it's been pretty clear that his administration has pursued the latter. The hostage families have been protesting almost every week. They don't seem to have made very much of an impact on Netanyahu or, for that matter, the ministers in his government. For instance, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is the national security minister, was caught on camera. There's an animosity, actually, to some of the hostage families. It's been quite shocking.
In the long months that Israel's relentless assault on Gaza has dragged on, the families of the hostages have taken it upon themselves to keep the cause of their loved ones in the public eye.
אנחנו כאן